Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us during the Lytham Partners 2024 Investor Select Conference. My name is Joe Diaz, Managing Partner of Lytham Partners. For this fireside chat, we welcome Anterix Incorporated, which trades on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol ATEX. Joining us from the company is Tim Gray, Chief Financial Officer. Before we jump into the discussion, I want to remind everyone that management is available for one-on-one meetings throughout the conference. If you have not already signed up and would like to schedule a one-on-one meeting, please visit lythampartners.com/select2024. From there, you can click on the investor registration button to make your one-on-one selections. Tim, thank you for joining us today. We greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's great to be here with you, and I appreciate Lytham Partners having us here kicking off 2024.
Fantastic. So let's start from the beginning. What does Anterix do for your customers?
Great. Good question. So we are a holder of 6 megahertz nationally of 900 megahertz wireless spectrum. With that spectrum, we're currently monetizing it by doing long-term leases with utilities, particularly investor-owned utilities across the United States. The utility community is rapidly changing, and there's a significant amount of grid modernization work going on across the country where private wireless broadband networks that we provide with our spectrum fit right into everything that utilities are doing as we move forward in that grid modernization process.
So, why do utilities have a need for private networks? What's the use case here?
Great. Good question again. So the utilities are in the midst of a massive amount of change, as we all know about. With old networks, everyone hears about grid modernization, new equipment, new technologies coming into play, particularly when you think about things that are rapidly changing. Many of these companies have made commitments that they've got to be carbon neutral by 2040 or 2050 or somewhere in there. And that's going to require a significant amount of different technologies being brought to bear across their networks. In addition to being carbon neutral, there are other things going on like cybersecurity, that those challenges get faced and are tougher and tougher every day. And so with these types of things happening, private networks enable utilities who are not new to having private wireless networks. They've had them for years and years and years, but now we bring the power of broadband so that they can do things like San Diego Gas and Electric is doing in their utility, where their focus is fire mitigation. They've got devices on the end of lines that can help turn off a power line before it hits the ground if there's been a tree falling across it or wind causes it to snap. And they're doing that with 900 megahertz spectrum in their service territory. But there's a wide variety of use cases that utilities are using, and that's what makes this so exciting. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing that people are being asked to do, but it's important for these utilities. A couple of other things that are important for them is to be able to control and command their own network, not be beholden to someone else. So if they're the ones who are putting up cell sites and determining where those are going to be, how hardened those cell sites are going to be, they're the ones who can identify when an event happens, what prioritization is going to take place to make sure their network stays up, or when sites are down, how they get put back up and how quickly they get put back up, and not being in line to a carrier who's going to put up sites for consumers. So those are all important things from their perspective that are significantly important, and being able to capitalize costs. Capitalization of costs is a big thing for utilities. CapEx dollars are much more important than OpEx dollars. They're able to get a rate of return on those dollars, so they build out these private wireless broadband networks, spend the capital to do that, and they can run that through their regulatory process.
Okay, so a bit of a complex question here. What is it that you actually sell these utilities?
We do leases. We do leases of air. Actually, it's wireless spectrum, Joe. So that's and again, as I said, we've got a position that's got 6 megahertz of 900 megahertz spectrum. The FCC allowed us in May of 2020 to be able to take this spectrum, retool it so that it could be used for broadband. Previous incarnation really could only be used for two-way voice. With broadband, you bring in the power of a lot of things you could do on your cell phone today that they can't do on their current networks or with the technologies as they existed prior to our FCC getting our approval. So, we take that spectrum, we do long-term leases. We've done 6 transactions with different utilities across the country, totaling a little over $270 million in total proceeds. 4 of those have been long-term, 20 or 30-year leases with renewals built on the end of them. 2 have been actual sale transactions. Our most recent transaction was a long-term 20-year lease with TECO, Tampa Electric in Florida, which covers multiple counties in Central Florida. And that was roughly a $30 million deal, again, on a 20-year lease.
Interesting. So talk to me about the interest that you're seeing from the utility industry. You said you've got six full-time clients now. What's the interest that you're seeing? What's this going to look like, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road?
Yeah, so we've got a pipeline today that's got roughly 60 different utilities in it, with spectrum valuation, the way we look at it, well over $3 billion. And they're in a variety of different stages of the sales process. When you're dealing with utilities, it's a long sales cycle. It's multi-year, and it doesn't go nearly as fast as you'd like it to. Keep in mind, these wireless broadband networks that they're putting together are very big projects that have to go through the utility approval process, across holding companies, operating companies, regulatory folks, all of those things that need to happen to make this process take place so they can get to approval of the network that they want to build, and as a part of that, the lease that they want to do with us. I like to tell people, when you look at the project that the utilities are often getting approved internally, and then working with regulators on, it's a multi-hundred billion dollar, or excuse me, so several $billion project, for example, of which a spectrum lease could be $50 or $75 million of that, a rather small piece of that entire project. But they've got to get that big, billion or $2 billion project moved through the machinations of their approval process, and that just takes time. But yeah, so it's these long-term leases that enable them then to go and build out these networks and move forward with the things that they want to do and the use cases that they want to be able to provide eventually to their customers.
So, in terms of working with these utility companies and their vendors and regulators, what's your role in terms of interfacing with those various groups of providers?
Yeah, I mean, we work directly with the utility as a part of the process. We support them in, I talked about the approval working its way through the internal systems at the utility. But as a part of that, there are other things that we do. We have built what we call the Anterix active ecosystem, which basically is 100 plus vendors that would be a part of a wireless network that gets built by a utility. So when they come to us as a part of the process and say, hey, we're interested in a cybersecurity solution to do X, Y, and Z, we can point to them to multiple vendors within our Anterix active ecosystem that can help provide the specific solutions that they're looking for. And those vendors have already done a lot of work at 900 megahertz. So it's kind of like your laptop. It's got that Intel Inside sticker on it. That's the same thing that's happening here with the group that's involved in the Anterix active ecosystem. And that group involves everyone from the big, huge infrastructure players, your Nokias and Ericssons, all the way down to very small, single device makers. And so there's kind of a bringing everyone together is what we're trying to do as we figure out what a specific utility is going to be doing. You asked about the regulators. From a regulatory standpoint, it's the utility that deals directly with the regulator. However, we provide the utility with support on being able to think about how other utilities have answered specific questions that they've gotten before, because we've now dealt with multiple utilities in multiple states. We also do a lot of work at NARUC, which is the National Organization of Utility Regulators. And so, teaching regulators about what these systems can do, what the wireless spectrum itself provides, but what the eventual end cases are going to do are going to end up enabling a lot of the things that the regulators today are asking the utilities to do moving forward.
Well, let's talk about the cadence of deals that you're seeing. What is your expectation over the next few years in terms of how many new customers you can actually get?
Yeah, Joe. So one of the things that we've done over the last year is kind of hold our forward-looking guidance as to specifically how many customers we're going to sign and how many dollars those are going to be worth. these processes, again, are multi-year, and pinpointing exactly when someone's going to sign as they go through these long, arduous processes has proven to be a pretty difficult process from our perspective, in being in the public markets. What we've done in the last year is started to talk a little bit more about the customers that are nearing the end of our pipeline and have shown a significant intent, what we call strong demonstrated or high level of demonstrated intent to move forward with us eventually. And that's basically taking everyone that's in our pipeline, we score them across a bunch of different metrics, that show that they want to move forward. A couple of those include things like speaking on public forums about 900 megahertz specifically, or private wireless broadband, putting out RFPs, and there's a multitude of others that get weighted, and we say, okay, once they reach a certain threshold, they're pretty certain that they're going to be moving forward. And so now we've got over 15 of those utilities in that last level of demonstrated intent, with value roughly of $900 million. And so when exactly those are going to sign, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that some of those that are at the end of that process that are moving forward include multiple utilities, a variety of different sizes, including larger than any of the deals that we've done to date, which we see as just a great sign for the momentum that we've continued to build kind of a standard of where utilities should be building out these private networks at 900 megahertz.
So is it reasonable to assume that these companies that are near the end of the agreements, they're probably pretty sticky? A lot of them are just going to roll over, and you're going to renegotiate, and you'll have them for a period of time. It just seems that once you get in, it would be kind of an arduous task to get out and bring somebody else in. Am I looking at that the right way?
No, I really think you are, Joe. I mean, it is, but it just takes time. And unfortunately or fortunately, that's just part of the utility industry and how they move. But again, it's these big projects they're moving through. It's not just one small, $50 million spectrum lease or $100 million, whatever that number is going to be. It's a very large build out that's crossing a big, diverse set of functions within a utility. And so, all of that's got to happen. And we continue to fully support those processes, but we do feel like there is a stickiness there once they're kind of at the end of that, that timeline.
Do they need to go through the regulatory process again to keep the agreement going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it depends utility by utility and state by state when exactly their rate case set is actually going to happen. Some may occur before they've contracted with us. Some may occur after they've contracted with us. It just depends. So we're more than willing to support, as I've said earlier, utilities in that process, even if they've already contracted with us. We're very happy to, come and sit with them and make sure that they can answer whatever questions that they may get posed by regulators as a part of that process. Because look, at the end of the day, our best sales force is the current customers that we've already got. These utilities, they all talk to each other. They all go to the same conferences, the same forums, have multiple calls with each other on issues that they're all facing. And so when we get a utility that's a current customer up talking about, Anterix has enabled us to do this, this, and this, and Anterix is a great partner for us even after we've signed a deal with them, that's the best sign to the next utility that we're there to support them and move them forward and give them what they need, to enable what they want to do.
Again, just kind of touching back a little bit on the regulatory thing here. How has the company evolved since you got the approval for the 900 megahertz platform? That was what, in 2020? Is that the case?
Yes, 2020.
So what's happened in this period of time?
Yeah, it is an interesting story. So we're now, almost at the 4-year anniversary of having a product that we could actually sell. So in the grand scheme of things, this is still relatively a new product for the utilities that we're working with. And so the company, we've grown a little bit. It's still not a very large entity. We've got about 80 people. We're highly focused on having a sales organization that supports utilities. You're not making cold calls every day. You're in talking to the partnership that you've developed within the utility as a salesperson at Anterix, helping them work through whatever their process is going to be. That may be building a business case, maybe bringing other, Anterix employees or consultants that we work with to answer difficult questions around, we've talked about regulatory, or we talk, they're technical things that they may not understand because they've not had or built out a broadband network before, that we'll have a sales engineer come in and talk to them specifically about what they can do. And that's really been where we've seen, most of the change within the organization over the last several years is bringing in that set of resources in-house or, contracted as consultants to come in and support us when we need them. And that's really been the evolution of the company. So.
Okay, lots going on there. The fundamentals of the business appear to be outstanding. Can you give us a brief overview of your cap structure, cash, debt, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So one of the interesting aspects and one of the sweet spots for us from going forward and using or having utilities as customers is the fact that they want to capitalize costs. And as a part of that process in capitalizing costs, one of the things is they want to prepay the lease that we've got with them. And by that, I mean they want to pay for it as we deliver spectrum over the first several years of the lease. So it creates some anomalies when you think about us as from a financial statement perspective. And let me talk about those. I always like to tell new investors, you kind of got to think about GAAP a little bit differently with this company, because we're then going to take that revenue or those contract proceeds when we sign a contract. We're going to recognize that pro rata over the term of the lease. So you've got a 20-year term. You're going to split that up over 20 years and recognize it that way. However, there's a bit of a disconnect because the cash flow all comes in up front. So in year 15, I'm still recognizing revenue when I've already got the cash. So think about from a GAAP revenue perspective and the actual cash flow a little bit differently. So it's really a cash flow story at the end of the day. And so we get those proceeds pretty quickly up front. This year alone, we're going to be cash flow positive through our September 30 quarter. We'll be reporting on December 31 here in a couple of weeks. We had collected roughly $60 million worth of cash with another $60 million to be collected. And so in the remainder of our fiscal year, which ends at the end of March. So, a positive story from a cash flow, set of drivers for us at Anterix. Now, what's that enable us to do? So in September, we just announced a new stock buyback program where we're going to repurchase up to $250 million of stock over the next 3 years. More cash than we have on our balance sheet. That goes without saying if you take a look. But what it does is talks about the confidence that our team has in the pipeline, being able to bring that to fruition and drive these cash flows. Because the other thing that's important to note is once we sign that lease, it doesn't cost us very much moving forward because the utility is they're the ones who are building out the network. We're not doing that. We, of course, are having the resources to support them, but we're not spending a significant amount of capital to build out a network. So that enables us to do things like return cash to shareholders through that share repurchase program.
In terms of your customer base, size-wise, large utilities, smaller utilities, electric, gas, water, can you give us a sense of what that customer base looks like?
Yeah, I mean, the key focus for us is investor-owned utilities. That doesn't rule out other types of utilities, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the highest driver of value and the biggest need is really in the large investor-owned utilities across the United States. And the vast majority of our pipeline is made up of those entities. But we've also got different types of customers already, like LCRA, the Lower Colorado River Authority in Texas, is a quasi-state entity that does, in addition to distributing power, they also manage the Colorado River in Texas. And so a lot of their use cases are going to be driven specifically by water, the devices that measure water movement and flooding and those types of things that are going on along their waterways, which is very different than a lot of the investor-owned electric utilities that we talk about being the main part of our pipeline. But and there are other opportunities, including gas, as I said, water, and some of those things. But again, it's the big IOU electrics that are the main driver of what's in our pipeline today.
Do you have anything new in the way of new technologies or adding to your 900 megahertz platform? Anything in the offing here in the next couple of years?
Well, let me talk a little bit about the opportunities there, and there are a couple of areas. One is, this company, and one, I want to go first by saying any of these opportunities we want to make sure are 100% accretive for our shareholders. Is leasing spectrum going to be it? It could be if we can't find the right set of opportunities that are accretive moving forward. But however, we think we've got a great platform by developing this standard for these utilities to be able to provide additional solutions. That could mean additional spectrum. That could mean expanding the spectrum position that we've got today within the band that we're in to make it larger. Or it could be additional products and services. Today, we offer a solution called Anterix, which helps utilities specifically when they're in their transition from their narrowband technologies to broadband technologies. And so we're offering that today to help support utilities as they move through that process. And that's been an important discussion that we've got going now with several utilities as they think about how they're going to get from A to Z when you go from what they currently have to an up and running broadband network. So we've got that out there. And there are multiple other opportunities because, look, you're signing a 20 or 30-year lease. So you've got now this great partnership. You've gone from being, do we trust these guys? Can they be the right vendor for us? Can they do what they need to do? Signed a deal. Now you're under the covers with them, and now you can have some detailed conversations about other things that Anterix can do to help them. And that can provide some additional revenue stream. Don't got anything other than Anterix that I can talk about today. But there's plenty of opportunity for us to expand the platform that we're developing every day with every new customer that we get.
You've mentioned on a few occasions here that your sales cycle is very long. I mean, what are the biggest challenges that your salespeople encounter while they're trying to work out an agreement with a potential client?
Yeah, I mean, it really, at the end of the day, is there's only so much we can control. It's really driven by the process, the calendar that the customer has. And so it really is providing that support on a day in and day out basis about what they need, staying in touch. So getting to know the team, really starting to develop, even for us at the executive level relationships with those customers at their C-suite level, so that we're very involved in what's happening and understanding the champions who are helping to move a project and making sure that they have the resources that they need. And so that is for us, really, the whole company gets involved in the sales process, not just one sales guy. And so we're very heavily involved in trying to push, things along. But again, when a utility capital committee meets, once a quarter, once every 6 months, it is what it is. And we've got to work around that. We've got to understand that. We've got to build that into the timeline and the processes that we've got. And we want to make sure that we do that.
In terms of deal structure, when you work this out with your clients, what are you really going after? Are you going after a sale? Are you going after a lease? What's the best situation for the company in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to mainly see leases coming out of the deals that we've got in the pipeline. There will be some sales. We've done a couple of sales to what are called complex system holders at 900 megahertz. This was identified in the FCC process where those that held a significant amount of sites in systems at 900 that they're already up and using would not have to voluntarily retune out of the way so that we could provide broadband in that area. And so we'd have to work with those entities. Both LCRA and San Diego, we've done the sales transactions with fit into that criteria. The others, did not for certain other reasons. And so we've done the leases with them. We expect more and more of those, more and more of our transactions to be leases, but there will be some sales sprinkled in with some creativity around what I call these complex systems. Look, I mean, we control, when we do a lease, we control the asset at the end of the day. We get the benefit of the renewal at the end of the contract. So there is definitely residual value with that as well.
What is the simplest way to articulate what your company does? I mean, if you had a 30-second elevator pitch, what's that elevator pitch?
Yeah, I mean, we are developing the de facto standard for private wireless networks and for the utility space. We are doing that, providing not only a spectrum, but we're bringing to bear multiple vendors who can help the utility do what they need to do across a variety of different use cases to support them as they go through the transition to being carbon neutral, the grid modernization work that's got to get done as we move forward into the into this century.
So as you think about the future of the company, what do you envision for Anterix over the next maybe 5 to 10 years? What is it that you think that investors are missing about the story today that will eventually come through in the numbers and makes the stock worth owning? What do they need to see or understand?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to continue to execute and deliver on the monetization side of the spectrum. We've got to continue to deliver these leases, these transactions. We're going to do that. We've got a strong pipeline. We've got a significant amount of customers who are at that high demonstrated intent standpoint. And we're going to continue to bring those across the finish line, just like we recently did with TECO. Keeping in mind, grid modernization is a must. It's going to happen. It's happening. So, people have to have the utilities have to have solutions, and we're going to be able to help provide solutions to make that happen. Look, and we've also, put out a share repurchase program to show additional confidence in the fact that we're going to be able to drive those cash flows, get those leases done, get those near-term, early payments coming in because of the prepay aspect of things, and continue to return cash to our shareholders. Our $250 million program is almost half of our market cap, which means we're, if we stay where we are right now, I believe we're currently undervalued, but and we should see some movement there as we continue to bring in deals. But we're going to be able to buy back a lot of shares on the current market capitalization. And we've got to remember, it just takes time for utilities to move forward. But we're here. We've really developed a market that kind of didn't exist before, and we're going to start to see that bear more and more fruit as we move forward.
Well, Tim, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for your time today. That was a great overview of Anterix, your markets, and what you do. We greatly appreciate it. Before we wrap it up, a quick reminder to our audience. To anyone that has not already signed up for a one-on-one meeting with Anterix, please visit lythampartners.com, select 2024, click the investor registration button to make your one-on-one selections. We hope you all enjoy the conference. Have a great day. And Tim, again, thank you so much.
Thanks again, Joe.